Hello, everyone, and welcome to our EuroShop 2026 recap. Instead of walking you through halls and stands, we wanted to do something a bit more useful today. To focus on the key trends we observed at EuroShop and the conversations we had with people there. EuroShop is, as you all know, one of the biggest retail technology fairs in the world. So naturally, there was a lot happening, from AI solutions to new checkout concepts and to new store technologies. But when you step back and take a bigger picture, several themes really stood out. So today, we're gonna go through the 5 trends that we noticed, and also we're gonna have here today with me my colleagues who have attended EuroShop. With me, we have here 𝗬𝗃𝗍𝗍𝗃. She is our account manager. Welcome, Maya.
Hello there. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Then her colleague from the sales team, 𝗘𝗂𝗿𝗶𝗃𝗲, sales manager.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dunya, for introduction.
Thank you, Dušan, for joining us. And lastly, but not, of course, least important at all, we have our team lead of legal consultants, 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗿𝗄𝗏. Tara, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dunya, for your kind introduction.
Thank you. So this is the team that has been to EuroShop, that has visited and lived all those 5 days there, days there. And today we're gonna share our impressions and experiences that we had with all regarding all the conversations we had with all the retailers and partners. So I think that the first trend that we should go over is definitely about AI, because that was the one thing that was impossible to miss at EuroShop. AI was everywhere in pricing, analytics, shrinkage prevention, especially personalization, operations. But what is interesting is that AI is no longer presented as some like futuristic idea. It's quite operational. It's part of every infrastructure almost inside retail systems. And retailers are starting to ask, like, they're not really asking why should we use AI, but rather where does AI actually improve our efficiency and margin? So at the same time, there is, of course, a lot of experimentation, and in some cases, of course, hype. So first, I'd like to start this talk with the team that has spoken with most of the people, and that's, of course, our sales team. And I'm directing my first question to Dušan. Can you tell us, please, did retailers you talked to at least talk about real AI projects, or were they mostly ideas?
That's a good question. I felt that retailers are finally over with the whole idea of AI phase. So they were not asking what is AI or how it can help me. They were asking how, for example, can AI help me with the thefts at the self-checkout store? So in my case, in my opinion, they are looking for a real tools right now that can solve their daily problems, let's say.
Okay. And did you feel like real investment interest from their side, or solely exploration?
So the biggest interest was actually in efficiency, for sure. So retailers want to use AI, for example, for their stock management, or to understand how are their customers moving throughout the store, how are they behaving throughout the store. And I believe that that's actually the place that they are willing to put their money on.
And were there some trends and talks that felt more like just hype?
Well, the hype there for me was like the fully robotic stores with no humans at all. And it looks good on a screen. It's very aesthetic, let's say. But for most retailers right now that I talk to, they are actually right now not ready to go that far. They still want they are still interested in the human touch, let's say.
Well, that sounds good, I believe, because I think we're gonna lose the humanity in all AI madness. But from more of implementation side, what would you say, Maya? Are retailers ready to integrate AI into their systems?
Yeah, yes, for sure. They're very interested in integrated AI into their system and to use it. However, they're really careful about it, and some of them are moving slow. Some of them are really early adopters in that sense. They're really interested in how to improve efficiency, customer experience, and so on. They want to make sure that for a fact that AI solutions are secure, that they are compliant with the regulation, that they're not disturbing any data and so on, and if they are really easier to integrate with their existing solutions. So definitely it's AI is seen as a tool to support different businesses and different operation, and also to stick with the current technologies that they are using as well. And definitely, as Dusan mentioned, there are really big hype around the AI on the EuroShop. I believe that every stand has some information and some advancement of their solution with the AI at the end.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we all saw. But did you notice that like any of them felt overwhelmed by, having to integrate some kind of form of AI into their systems?
Not really. Most of the retailers are really interested in that topic, in the way how that AI technologies can assist them rather than feeling overwhelmed. Most of the larger companies already have some AI strategies, how to implement with their solution, or how to use the AI to be efficient and more comprehensive on the market and so on. However, small retailers are still, let's say, maybe learning and looking into practical details and examples of the how the AI can assist them. But however, overall, AI is definitely seen as a next step in retail technology rather than some, let's say, trend or something complex and intimidated from the retail standpoint.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Maya. And from a regulatory perspective, Tara, would you say that regulations are keeping up with AI?
It is not a simple question. Actually, it is a simple question, but it's not easy to answer, having in mind all the rapid changes that are occurring, both in the AI sphere in the practical sense, and not just in retail area, but in many other areas, as well as in the regulatory framework of many countries for fiscalization and overall for a wider retail goal. So on this topic, we can say that somewhat they are trying to keep up, but the thing is that with the technology advancements and all of the updates, and many companies, as we've seen and my colleagues have mentioned, are trying to in some way implement AI in their technologies and in their also both the business side and software side, and those who want to use it as retailers in their stores. That's a new trend, we can say. There are advancements in terms of regulations when we compare it to a few years back, 5 or 3 years even, but there's still a long way to go in this sense. But for example, in the area of European Union, there is one of the more significant regulations that has been provided in 2024, and later on it was developed in 2025, which is of course the AI Act, or the Artificial Intelligence Act, which did introduce some of the requirements. It was also attempted to be one of the most comprehensive regulations about the AI sphere, but It still has a long way to go. There are some plans to potentially develop it further and to make it more useful in practical terms. There are some of the requirements that are set there, and it's not concerning particularly only retail or specific cases in retail. It's like rather a wider regulation in this area. There are some of the parts of this law, for instance, that are important and in effect, but much of the regulation still needs to be further defined, still requires many more details. So we can say overall, if we would take like a general conclusion, is that many of the areas and topics in sphere of AI, particularly for separate countries and different markets, are still gradually in development, and they are somewhat not in the same timeline as the technology is advancing and as the needs of the business space require. So in the future period, it will definitely be necessary to further develop this area and to be kind of faster from the regulatory side, so that the actual technology that will be used in this area and that is currently used can be fully, we can say, compliant, just like other areas that are necessary to have regulated in retail. So for retailers, for example, for adopting AI in different areas, in pricing, in optimization, doing some logistics and analytics, and in their supply chain operation, that this actually means that for the future period and already it's necessary to be more let's say diligent and have careful planning, careful monitoring in terms if they want to introduce AI, or if they're in the process of introducing it to their retail processes, that they would need to actually check further for more regulations and also interpretations of the current ones, because there is not enough regulations still, and those that do exist need further development. So we can say overall that regulation is still evolving, and that from that standpoint, it is still, we can say, a new area concerning the retail requirements.
Thank you, Tara, for this extensive answer. But I also wanted to ask you one more question. Did anybody ask you legal questions about AI? Were there any discussions, or do you think they're coming in the future?
Yes, so both. There was an interest in AI and its influence on retail. When we speak generally in the fair itself, there were also some questions in terms whether we believe on our side that AI will impact compliance, impact different areas that are still not fully developed. Also, there were those who were interested in whether we'll be following future trends that will occur still in AI area and the regulations in this topic. But mostly it was something more focused on the technology side and not as much the, let's say, legal consulting side in terms of the topics that were covered. However, there was, for instance, a single question related to whether we are informed about potentially already some of the AI tools that certain countries are developing and using in their monitoring of fiscalization and from the tax authorities and government side. And there are some examples in Europe of countries that have utilized certain more simpler tools that they use for better administration, better tracking of some topics on their portals and websites. For instance, there is a chatbot that the Serbian tax authority produced, which helps for those who are visitors on the website to kind of get around and find out about different topics in taxes and find the topic of their interest. There are also some other countries like Spain, like Austria, like Greece, that have developed certain tools which help in monitoring the tax processes, and also that help, for instance, in also handling going around on different areas of their portals, such as virtual assistants on the Greek portals.
Awesome. Thank you for answering this question, Tara. I believe somebody found it valuable, even though they're not really thinking about legal part yet, but they will be for sure. And once they do, they can for sure talk with you more about it. But let's go to the next trend. Another major theme at EuroShop was definitely the evolution of checkout. We saw many different approaches, from smart cards, mobile POS devices, scan and go systems, hybrid store concepts. And in many of these models, checkout is becoming less visible in the store experience. The goal is clearly to reduce friction and make purchasing faster and easier for customers. But as the checkout is becoming less visible, the technology behind it, of course, is becoming more complex. So I'd like to ask first our sales manager, 𝗘𝗂𝗿𝗃𝗲, which checkout concept attracted the most people at the fair? What do you think? What did you observe?
Well, in my opinion, it is definitely the hybrid models, because people, especially younger generations, like to see the options where they can just use a smart card in the store and skip the line or the queue. But on the other side, you have other people that still prefer to use a regular terminal, let's say. So for the retailers, if they still want to be competitive on the market, they need to have the understanding for both sides, for both needs, and they need to offer flexibility, because that is the only approach for them.
And from the talks that you had with the retailers, are they replacing traditional checkouts, or are they mostly just testing it? What are the vibes?
They are not replacing everything yet. They are still in the testing phases. They are adding a few scan and go stations or mobile phones here and there for the staff, just to see how the customers are reacting to that. But those are the huge investments, huge implementation, huge organization, logistics, and so on. And it cannot be done overnight. So it is still in the whole testing phase.
Okay, thank you for that insight, 𝗘𝗂𝗿𝗃𝗲.
You're welcome.
Mayo, again, from the implementation perspective, what backend challenges did you hear about when it comes to these new smart ways of checkout?
There were definitely many of them, and most of them are related to the system integration, the consistency of the data, what's happening in the store, training of the personnel to use different kinds of, let's say, checkout options that can be used, and having a multi-channels store operation. And definitely when we are getting from the fiscalization point of view, because most of the talks at the booth was related to the fiscalization and the perspective, how it interferes the different channels and different approaches within the, let's say, location where the sales is happening. They're mostly concerns about the compliance requirement, the real-time transactions when they are having, let's say, different checkout systems within the same location, and how to ensure that the fiscal data are securely, let's say, transmitted to the tax authority or any other, especially when we have countries which has some hardware device which needs to be in the store, and how to connect all different checkouts, mobile POSs, and ways of selling within the location with the system. So definitely the security and managing the volume of the real-time data were some common topics that we have, let's say, discussed about, and how to solo all of those details, not just in one location, one store, one country, but also how to combine all of those systems with the retailers, software providers who are present in multiple markets, and how to attract those details to be, let's say, fully compliant and safe to use in one country without any issues.
Mm-hmm. Great. But so I think that's definitely, it sounds like the integration is becoming more complex with these new checkout models, right? Did we figure out that?
For sure. That it's getting more complex to connect more different system channels, technologies, and combine them with let's say maybe the fiscalization systems, which are definitely maybe not going that fast forward with the technology is at this time, and definitely fiscalization is adding more complexity to it, since all of those systems must comply with countries' regulation, legal compliance, and even in sometimes real-time reporting and so on. And definitely at the same time, the retailers want, let's say, faster implementation, simpler maintenance. And when you have, let's say, different system within the same location, different countries and so on, it tends to be, let's say, a big effort at the end for them to try to reduce all of those complexities at the same time.
For sure. Thank you, Mayo, for that insight. And of course, the important part as well, the regulatory one. Tara, would you say that the disappearing checkouts is creating new regulatory questions as well?
Yes, so like from the legal perspective, when we say like the regular checkouts are like slowly not as the main types that are used, or are slowly, we can say, in future fading away, but currently are less used than in the past. This doesn't mean or translate to easier processes or complexity fading away as well. Actually, the opposite is usually the truth. Also, it of course depends on different regulatory frameworks on different markets, but in general, the moment we can say where that regular human interaction between the customer and the seller is not present, there are so many topics and regulatory questions that naturally come to the surface and that need to be solved, especially because usually these new ways of handling sales and different sales channels that many of the retailers are nowadays using produce more questions and are actually not considered by most of the regulatory those great regulations in different countries, because these are usually much more of creative scenarios and different business cases that are not even, what you say, thought about by many of those who are creating regulations. So, for instance, there is one of very practical cases and issues that where some other wider regulation outside of just fiscalization, for example, can produce a problem if all of the details are not covered and if everything is not according to the specific processes for such unregular checkouts. We can say, for instance, in consumer protection area and also in figuring out the different moments when the transaction actually is considered that it occurred. What is the moment of the payment? Did all the data has all the data been transferred to, for instance, in many countries in real time to the necessary tax authorities, servers, and portals? Is the fiscal receipt produced properly, and so on? So when the checkout is not, we can say, the regular case where the customer comes actually to the store and buys at the checkout from the cashier, then different type of problems can arise, and all of those questions need to be handled not only from the technical standpoint, but there are also regulatory problems that need to be solved. And there are some of the regulations which are more, we can say, advanced, but usually they are either on the EU level or in certain markets and countries, some of them from Europe. But for many, there are new questions that have happened and that are arising from this topic. And also it certainly creates more, we can say, more complexity.
For sure. So would you say that the rules are clear in these new models, or are there like still gray areas? As far as I understood, there are still gray areas, but just to make it clear for our audience and me as well.
Yes, so yeah, you're absolutely correct, Dunja. There are quite a gray area and it's only partially regulated. One of the problems, there are actually multiple layers of problems. For sure, most of the laws and bylaws and many other regulations, they are not as fast in producing rules or not as precise as producing rules that could correspond to different business cases, different situations, and also regulatory framework is never as creative as the business setting can be for different companies and for retailers. In addition to that, many of the regulations are quite generally written. They are not as comprehensive and detailed, and they require further research, further interpretation, and most of these new models require combining various regulations, using different sets of interpretations, understanding not only the law, for instance, that is a trade law or VAT law or fiscalization law, but also taking a look at those laws in relation to different regulations from that country and sometimes even wider, especially for countries in the European Union. So just like you said, it's not as easily applicable and not as such a clear area. Mostly it is something that still needs to be developed. And I believe that for some time, technology and business cases that the many retailers are actually using in practice are going to be ahead of the regulatory framework in terms of clear guidance and clear rules.
Thank you, Tara, for this answer. Yeah, that's usually how it goes, I believe. But we didn't only see, of course, different types of checkouts, smart cards, etc. There was another strong trend that we noticed is that retailers are no longer thinking in terms of individual tools. They are thinking in terms of ecosystems. So excuse me. So retailers basically want solutions that connect everything together. POS systems, ERP, payments, inventory, loyalty program, retail media platforms. So integration kind of became a central topic in the retail technology discussions. That's what at least we noticed, and I believe everybody else at EuroShop. And what about you, Dušane? From the talks you had with multiple prospects, are they looking to consolidate vendors?
Yes, definitely. And this was like a major theme and topic on our stand because retailers are honestly looking to, and they are basically tired of managing 10 different vendors for 10 different things. It's too much noise, it's too much administration work, too much contracts. At the end of the day, too much of maintenance and a lot of spent resources. They are actually looking for partners, let's say fewer but better partners who can handle multiple stuff and multiple parts of their businesses so they can focus on what's the most important part and that is growing their business. And for example, for our case, and many clients came to us with the same kind of problem, for example, from fiscalization perspective, where they want to as you know, we are a software company, we provide the software for fiscalization, and many of them are coming to us because and using our software because they would have a lot of different countries centralized in one place instead of having 10 different fiscalization vendors for each country because it's too much maintenance, too much costs, and so on and so on.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And I mean, yeah, of course, according to what you just said, they prefer one ecosystem. But unfortunately, I believe that the real case, that's not applicable everywhere at this moment. So I believe that some of them are still comfortable working with multiple specialized providers, right?
Well, most of them are definitely leaning toward that one ecosystem for their system. So they do not want to be the ones who are gluing different types of technologies in their system. They want their POS, their payments, loyalty programs to be connected and to talk to each other, let's say, out of the box. because and I can say that they are leaning towards that all in one field because it is much simpler, it is much connected, let's say, and it is much better and easier to support long term.
For sure. I mean, I believe everybody can agree with that. Thank you, Dušan, for your insights. And Majo, what, of course, from the integration perspective, what integration pain point came up most often during your talks?
There were different points that we have reached during the conversation with the retailers, but maybe to be back on, it was good to be at EuroShop and to see what is happening, and with the different technologies, different products presented, and definitely one of the, let's say, most common call it pain was, let's say, connecting all systems together. So having the ERP, POS, payments, media, loyalty, fiscalization system, everything together, working simultaneously, not causing any issue, and being at hands of the let's say, retailer to be able to strive in what they do best in sales. It is something that reach in a couple of conversation, and also that depends if the retailer is also has their own software or they're using different ones, and how they are making and combining all of those different much needed functionalities within the store, location, hotel, and etc. And definitely that was the most challenge, to how to all of those systems interact together, and keeping things secure and compliant with local regulation. Also, when we adding to the fiscalization point of view, which was our main topic of conversation with the retailers, definitely having the partner for them which covers multiple market, it's something that makes easier process for them, that at least in one of the, let's say, area they can rely on similar integration, same team, and so on. And that is what is really important for them at the end, to have somebody who can they trust, related to those really crucial details, but concerning to all, let's say, business within one country.
Of course, yeah. So would you say that they are simplifying their systems, or are they actually adding more complexity?
I believe that depends from market to market. What is the let's say, the goal in that case? They're trying to simplify all technologies, and they're trying to move to platforms who are covering everything in one place. Different ways of let's say, checkouts, and combining with all mentioned ERP, POS, loyalty, media, and so on, and having one platform for everything, with some central base for all communication and so on. However, let's say business needs, omnichannel sales, fiscalization, compliance, and requirements are still adding some complexity depending of the country to country. So definitely the goal for everybody is to simplify operation while keeping their system connected and reliable. However, sometimes it is making and let's say it's creating complex environment for everybody to be, let's say, cooperating in that environment as it is.
For sure. Thank you, Majo, for that insight. And Tara, when, like, of course, from legal perspective, when multiple systems handle one transaction, who carries responsibility?
Yeah, so not an easy answer for this one either. So this depends on many factors, and Some of them are depending on the regulations, of course, in the particular market. Other are depending on if we're talking specifically about fiscalization, if we're talking about wider retail requirements, if it's in-store, e-commerce, and so on, what kind of sales channel it is. So it can vary and be really different, but generally speaking, it was much easier to determine and much easier to track in a more traditional setup of a regular retail store, of retailer who is using either hardware and software solution or simply solution, where it was much clearer who was responsible for which part, what was the retailer's part of the responsibility in terms of the sales process, the fiscal receipt and fiscalization overall, and what was the responsibility of the software producers. So for instance, in some cases, a single company can be both the producer of be the producer of software and use it by their own, or it can also provide it for many other companies on the market. And what is also interesting, for instance, from fiscalization standpoint, that even though the customer only sees, we can say, the seller or the retailer in front of him and maybe believes that the processes are much simpler than they actually are, there are multiple stakeholders that are involved in the whole process. And for instance, a completely different company can be responsible for providing the software for fiscalization or another component that is relevant for fiscalization. Sometimes there are multiple companies providing wider and different elements necessary for the sales process and producing a fiscal receipt, which are other companies outside of that, not that particular retailer. And also with these multiple systems that are included, the complexity is getting bigger. So the responsibility also, it depends responsibility for what particular part. Either is it for the processing of the transaction, is it for some additional, we can say, add-ons that are included outside of transaction in terms of its fiscalization. For instance, I think that my colleagues have mentioned that some additional topics such as producing some specific discounts, using some loyalty programs, producing a separate application that could be used in a particular sales channel, and so on. So this can really vary based on different parameters and depending on different requirements in the countries, and also the complexity of the solutions and how many stakeholders are involved. It also adds on another layer of complexity. What is interesting is that from some companies I have heard, for instance, that they also, because of this, require quite regular monitoring of changes and being able to, for someone to, let's say, be their source of information from the start to finish in terms of not only when they are first entering a certain market or starting to use a certain system or multiple software, but also to track the changes throughout the whole process because of all those additional points that they, for instance, want to add or adapt and to make their solution more, let's say, innovative and useful, but also it adds another layer of complexity. So it's not only about starting the process and choosing a particular software or multiple, let's say, systems that they want to combine, but also tracking all of those changes and staying compliant not only from the legal perspective, but also from other points like the technical perspective and changes that they want to adapt. So for that purpose, they had some questions, and yes, it was a really interesting discussion. Yeah.
So I think we can say that this is becoming a bigger issue for retailers, right?
Yes, I completely agree, especially in the recent years, and also with the development of newer kinds of sales channels, for instance, through social platforms, through using many new technologies and many types of processes which were not as used and familiar even a few years or 5 or 7 years ago. So in that regard, we have seen that maybe some retailers are speaking about moving through to more software-based, more cloud type of solutions, more integrated solutions, which allow them to scale more easily, to be compliant in different types of sales channels, and to be, let's say, more flexible when those changes need to be adapted, because there is a trend, especially in the recent 5 to 10 years, of more changes occurring, and more of the countries where both retail compliance and fiscalization compliance are required, that are introducing software changes and that are allowing for more flexibility, but also are changing much faster than before. So we are also acknowledging that there are growing regulatory changes, and it's necessary to have attention on wider areas, not only solely some of the more famous, or let's say more traditional sales processes, sales channels, but also to have in mind that as this problem is getting bigger and the retailers have some new changes that they want to adapt, that it's necessary to have everything in mind and cover wider rules, because many of the regulations that are currently placed, especially in, we could say, niche topics such as fiscalization, are not covering all of the requirements that are necessary to be covered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Tara, for your insights. They're really meaningful, but of course, besides retailers wanting it to become a complete ecosystem, there were other trends as well. One of the other clear messages that we got at EuroShop is that the physical retail is very much alive, but the role of the store is changing. We already talked about this when we had our NRF recap. But of course, this is something that is still going to develop because, you know, stores are becoming more about experience, data hubs, and kind of logistic points for the online orders. So the physical store is basically no longer just a place where transactions happen. It's becoming a part of a much broader retail ecosystem. And I'd first like to ask Dusan, are retailers investing more in experience or efficiency? What would you say based on the conversations that you had?
I would say that it's a mix, but let's say that efficiency is the priority right now because of the high costs and the end labor shortages. But the fact is that retailers are willing to automate the basics. However, they are, and I'm pretty sure that they are aware that if a store is boring, no one will come to the store. So the end goal for them, I believe, is that they will use the technology to make the store more interactive or more faster or more smoother. And at the end of the day, again, the end goal for the store to be more interesting. They want to free up their staff from the tills, so their staff can actually focus on the customers, talk to the customers, and actually improve the customer's experience.
Thank you, Dusan. And did you sense any optimism about physical retail?
Absolutely. I mean, the energy in the halls was incredible, and the whole place was packed. I'm actually very curious what is the exact number of the people who attended the EuroShop. But you could you could clearly see that the people are still in love with shopping in person, let's say, and being in a real store. And the physical stores are not going anywhere. I believe that retailers are only using the technology to upgrade those stores just to match the customer's experience and and to understand the customer's needs today. I can say that mood on the EuroShop was actually that physical retail is not going anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. I attended some presentations about that topic, and for sure it's not gonna leave it. They're just gonna improve more. It's more about the experience. And when it comes to the number of the people that were at the trade show, I actually looked at those numbers a couple of days ago, and the estimate is around 80,000 people from around 140 countries. So yeah, we felt that for sure. And Mayo, what do you say? Are retailers modernizing their entire store networks or mostly testing pilot projects?
It definitely depends. Maybe I can just refer to previously stated and conversation between physical and virtual stores or e-commerce and so on. And definitely the physical stores are not going anywhere. And with all innovation and details we saw on the EuroShop, definitely the customer experience is something which is most important for the retailers when we are talking about stores. If I refer to your questions regarding the how they're piloting their, is it, let's say, mostly spread to all stores at once, or it's just test pilots? It depends. Definitely when the retailer is already present in the market, they are slowly testing the let's say, novelties and new projects like that, and to see how at the end the customer is going to react, how it's worked, does it causing any issues, and so on and so on. And after that, if it's proven to be a good showcase, it's then spread to entire networks and so on. They're definitely testing the new technologies, payment system, how the AI interacts with it, and how is the reaction from the customers on the ground. However, if there are some are new openings within the location and with a good let's say, investigation of the market and expectation of what are the expectations of the customers, definitely some of them are entering with the whole new product, and by that conquering the complete market. That also goes with the physicalization as well. And what is the most important is that that there are no, let's say, issue, and that everything is fast on the checkout, that the customer is receiving good attention, and that they are getting all the information they can get from the store and so on. So it depends. However, the modernization of the store is already happened, and it's going to be let's say, more advanced in the future.
Thank you, Mayo. And Tara, from legal perspective, are regulations having a bigger impact on how stores operate?
Yeah, so definitely overall they're playing a much bigger role than they did in the daily operations of many stores than it did in the past and in many markets. And not only on some of the main processes that are happening in the stores and that are related to fiscalization, but also wider to different rules, for instance, related to possibilities of having discount sales periods, of using different types of solutions, on how many of the countries introduced some of the later requirements about registering stores, registering all the processes that happen in the stores, and doing so for many is now required in real time, and new requirements and regulations are still expected, primarily because, and coming to the surface in many countries, primarily because of the rapid changes in technology, and also wider possibilities of even how in-store sales and in-store returns and many of the processes that occur in store can actually start somewhere else. For instance, can occur by ordering online, but picking up in store, or returning in store, or they can be connected to different types of sales channels and areas, or can occur in, for instance, on a vending machine or a specific type of checkout, which is not a regular kind. And in addition to that, there are also it's a necessity to keep in mind that why the regulations have to be tracked and to actually compare if there are some discrepancies and what has to be interpreted from different areas, from consumer protection, from rules in GDPR, consumer protection, trade, wider trade rules, and also, as I said, some specific guidance and specific regulations that concern particularly stores and may not, for instance, concern some other type of sales channel, for instance, e-commerce or outside trade, where the customer is not coming to the shop, to the store, to the direct store. Yeah.
Thank you, Tara. And we're coming basically to the latest trend, well, the last trend that we noticed, and that was one of the interesting things that we actually noticed during our conversations at EuroShop, is that the innovations are very visible, of course, but there is also caution. Retailers want to innovate, they want to adopt new technologies and to experiment with new store concepts, but of course, they're also aware of the complexity involved, just as you mentioned, Tara, because, you know, scaling across multiple countries, managing complex tech stacks, adapting to changing regulations, there is a constant balance between moving fast and staying stable. So my first question is to you, Dušane. Did you feel confidence or caution from the retailers you spoke with?
I will again go with the most diplomatic answer, and I'll say that it's a mix of both, but actually it is, because on the main stages and all the presentation, it's all about the AI. Everyone's talking about the AI revolution and what is the next big thing. But as soon as people stepped into the booths and actually asked something, that's the moment where the caution actually kicks in. And I believe that retailers are not just looking for a next shiny toy to buy. They are asking, is this stable? How does this fit into my system? Is it going to break my system? And it's like they have one foot on the gas because they do not want to follow the market. They want to innovate. But the other foot is on the brake. They are very safe, making sure that everything is moving safely, because they want to make sure that their foundation is solid.
Okay, thank you. Well, you basically answered my next question, which was like, were they moving fast? Were they still evaluating carefully? But as far as I understood, they're kind of in between, right?
Yeah, well, they are evaluating very carefully, and the days of buying a solution just to have it are definitely over. And every conversation now in retail starts with the hard questions. They are very questionable, and they actually want to know exactly how one system scales, because it's easy to make something work in one store, but what will happen if you hit 500 stores across 10 different countries? And actually, for us at 𝗏𝘂𝗃𝗏 Solutions, the big one is always obviously compliance. They are always checking every detail to see if the technology is following the law or tax regulations or so on. And they are very eager and they want to move forward, but they were burned before by surprises or some penalties or legal headaches. So they're actually taking their time and making sure that when the moment of pressing the button comes, that everything is bulletproof and that everything is working properly.
For sure. Thank you, Dušane, for your insights. And Mayo, what would you say, what worries retailers the most when scaling these new technologies?
Yeah, definitely. Retailers are mostly worried about making their system work well when they are growing at the end. They don't want to issues with the integration, with the compliance, with local regulation, complicated technology setups, and so on. And definitely they are really excited about details with trends, with innovation, and so on and so on. But they're really cautious at one end that it needs to be deeply analyzed, tested within the system to make sure that everything is going really straightforward and not to make any issue and complicated rules for the store at the end. So they definitely want to grow fast, but the idea is to keep it simple and then stable in all areas, not just related to technology, but related to the compliance and how the interaction between all needed parameters within the store.
Thank you, Mayo. And finally, Tara, where do you see the biggest gray zones right now when it comes to regulation?
Yeah, so as we mentioned somewhere at the beginning of this retail talk, one of the gray areas is primarily in the regulations related to AI and implementation of AI in the retail area and concerning all of the different solutions that are used in retail. Also, as I said, the discrepancy between the rapid technological development and not only this area that lacks a regulation and clear guidance, but also some other that concern various sales channels or combining multiple sales channels. And one of the, we can say, additional gray areas is how to actually balance the different automation processes and human oversight, and also how to comply with all of the regulations in that area, but kind of go, we can say, with more innovation, because it's not as easy as many have had questions about, not as easy to implement many of the innovations and to stay on track. They are kind of, what we can say, skeptical about how fast all of the innovations that were presented and possibilities can actually be implemented, and whether to go on that to that route because of all of the complexity and lack of necessary regulations for that area. So there are multiple topics that could be covered here, but those are just some of the biggest gray zones that we noticed. Yes.
Thank you so much, Tara, for your answer. And I want to thank all of my colleagues for joining me today and for sharing their insights and everything they saw and noticed at EuroShop. I believe this was a quite valuable and useful session to all the retailers. But in order to wrap this up, let's just mention that the EuroShop 2026 showed us that retail industry is evolving quite quickly. AI is becoming standard, the checkout is changing, the retail technology is becoming reinvented basically, but at the same time, retailers are becoming more aware of the complexity that comes with innovation. So while the technology landscape is evolving quickly, the real challenge is making sure that everything works together in a stable and scalable way, just as my colleagues mentioned. And I want to thank you everyone for joining this Retail Talk session, and I hope we'll see you at the next one. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dunya, once again. Bye.